Today I'm going to be talking about the nature of ecosystems. In this video, you will learn everything about what an ecosystem contains and what an ecosystem really is. First of all, what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is basically a community interacting with its environment. The community is a group of organisms from different species who are all growing and living together within a certain area. This ecosystem is not only the organisms but also the environment in which they are inhabiting. In an ecosystem, there is a one-way flow of energy amongst them as well as a continuous cycle of nutrients. An ecosystem is known as an open system due to it always needing the input of energy as well as the input of nutrients to survive. Throughout Earth, many different ecosystems are similar and different due to their specified function and structure. Within an ecosystem, there are several different participants. There are primary producers, which are plants, photosynthetic protists, and fungi. These primary producers use light as energy to produce food for themselves. Also, they are the basis of any ecosystem. Producers are consumed by consumers, which are animals, fungi, heterotrophic protists, bacteria, and archaea. There are several different types of consumers that exist. Consumers are described by their diet. The different diets are those who eat only plants, which are named herbivores, those who eat only the flesh of animals, called carnivores, those who eat both animal and plant materials, called omnivores. Also, parasites who live inside or on a living host and feed on its tissues, detrivores who dine on small particles of organic matter, and lastly, decomposers who feed on organic waste and break them down into basic units. Decomposers are mainly bacteria and fungi. Energy throughout an ecosystem flows only one way. This one way begins when sunlight is captured by producers and is converted into energy to produce food. This energy is then given off as heat in metabolic reactions. Throughout the food chain, less and less energy is available for the consumer, since the energy is released as heat by each organism. Here, you can see the flow of energy through an ecosystem. At each of the participants, heat is released and not transferred. Now, since you have seen how energy flows, you may wonder, how does nutrients flow? Nutrients flows differently than that of energy. Nutrients can be cycled continuously through an ecosystem. Unlike how, once energy is used, it cannot be recycled. Nutrients can be lost, but also gained. For example, mineral ions are added to an ecosystem when weathering processes break down rocks as well as when winds blow in mineral-rich dust from elsewhere. Both leaching and soil erosion can remove minerals from an ecosystem. Over time, in most ecosystems, these gains and losses of minerals tend to balance out. Here, you can see the flow of nutrients throughout an ecosystem. The gray lines in this diagram represent nutrients flowing throughout the participants. Once nutrients have been broken back down into their most basic form by the decomposers, they continue their cycle and go back to where they originated, the producers. All the participants in the ecosystem are in a specific trophic level. A trophic level is what organizes an ecosystem and shows the feeding relationships between the organisms. The trophic level also shows the energy transfer in these relationships. This diagram shows the many levels of the trophic structure. The most energy can be found at the first level, which consists of the primary producers. As you go up in levels, the amount of energy becomes less. The second level is made up of the primary consumers. The third level is made up of the secondary consumers, and the last level, which is the fourth level, is the tertiary consumers, which are the carnivores at the topmost level of the food chain. The food chain determines the organism's trophic level. The food chain is a description of who eats whom in one path of energy flow in an ecosystem. The food chain and trophic structure work hand in hand to organize the ecosystem. This is an example of a food chain which shows how each trophic level comes into play.